Viewers like you make this program possible. Support your local PBS station.
I like the way bourbon turns me into a redneck. A Korean redneck.
Very little has changed in the way our whiskey is made over the past 200 years. And yet it's a drink that's still barely understood.
It's like a southern redneck and an Indian getting a room together and they start dancing.
But what exactly makes a great bourbon?
It's like a 60-year-old drag queen wearing like old leather and smoking a pipe.
What do you do on the weekends?
Let me show you my Kentucky.
Enter the mind of a chef.
All curious chefs are just fascinated by their surroundings. But that is intense. They don't teach you this in cooking school. I spent a long time drinking bourbon, but I've only spent a small amount of time drinking bourbon right. And that was something that I learned in Kentucky. It is a rite of passage. It's one of the few times where the light bulb really goes off in your head. And you say, oh, have I been doing this wrong my entire life? Bourbon is not just a drink it fast and get drunk drink anymore. It's got a proper place in the pantheon of high-end spirits, and we should respect it.
I would just like to say the instructive part of that sentence was it's not a drink fast and get drunk spirit anymore.
I'm going to jump right into it. I've got this little thing I've set up for you guys. We're going to taste 3 different bourbons, right? So this is a little secret thing, it's very well known in Kentucky. It's called Ancient Age. And it is a cheap bourbon. And you can tell because it's got a plastic cap. Yes, it's
still glass.
It's still glass.
It's glass.
Has that to recommend it?
You know, some of the other ones are like, oh, they're plastic. Yeah.
Right.
In many blind taste testings, it will beat out bourbons double the price. So it makes a great, great bourbon. So one of the things is bourbon is made from corn. So what better way to sort of introduce kind of a flavor profile and how to pair foods than popcorn? So this is just dry popcorn. Obviously, it's going to be a very simple pairing. The corn and the bourbon is going to kind of start to resonate. And so this is a 10-year. So we're talking.
Really? That's a 10-year-old bourbon?
It's a 10-year. So we're talking age, but not an incredible amount of age.
I wouldn't even have guessed a cheap bourbon would be 10 years old.
You know, everyone always asks me, like, what kind of bourbon should I pair with this? You know, I'm eating barbecue. And I always say it matters less the bourbon, but it matters the age.
Oh, okay.
Right? Because the longer the bourbon sits in that barrel, the more exposure to the tannins and the wood and the char, so it's going to develop more flavors.
Bourbon is whiskey, but not all whiskey is bourbon. And by law in 1964, U.S. Congress said that bourbon had to be the following: made in the U.S., made with at least 51% corn, aged in new charred oak barrels, and no coloring or flavor added. The initial bourbon coming off the still is very raw. It's called White Dog. It's something that you can drink, but you really don't want to drink. When you put it in the barrel, that's where the color and most of the flavor comes from. Younger bourbon is just like, you know, a small child. It's young, it's raw, it's not good. It really takes some time in this barrel to become mature. Then it gets to be 6 or 8 years old, so it's like a teenager, and it's a lot more flavor, but not there yet. Still able to drive, but probably a little scary. Then you get to, say, a 10 or 12-year-old, and now you're starting to talk about a young adult that has some refinery, and it's very nice and very enjoyable. You can drink it neat. It's very easy to mix it with a good cocktail. Better the whiskey, better the cocktail. 15-year-old, it's quite a real drink of whiskey, real kick in the pants, because it's 107 proof out of the bottle. Then you get to say our 20-year-old, and that's more like a lady. That's really refined, it's soft on the tongue, and that's what we want. I call it butter whiskey. It's just so soft and smooth. Then all of a sudden, as it stays in the barrel a little longer, it gets a little more edge to it and starts to get to that point where it's an old man and you need to put him out to pasture maybe because, oh, just scary, just too old. Get him out of here.
Brisket's fun because it sort of can hold up to cooking.
Yeah,
Time.
yeah.
You can do, you know, it's almost like you can't beat it up. You do
I've seen plenty of people beat it up. There's no question about that.
Paul Key's a chef of Key Restaurant in Austin, Texas. We had a shared love of bourbon. It's always fun to cook with someone like that. All right, so first thing I'm gonna do is make a rub. I got just salt, dark chili, black pepper, and cinnamon. I'm just gonna score it a little bit. It helps the bourbon to penetrate into the meat. I'm gonna start rendering off some of the fat here. You know, I try not to use a super high quality bourbon actually for cooking, especially with stuff like this. Like medium, middle of the road is fine.
I feel like except for desserts. Desserts, I think the quality shine. Cheers.
All right, so I'm gonna throw some aromatics in here. Will you actually help me and do some carrots for me? I think people have just tapped into these days the idea that you can use the bourbon barrel after the bourbon's been drained to flavor things, and it's pretty cool. It's like bourbon takes on a second life.
After.
Yeah. So what I do is actually with this, it's like I've got bourbon in there as an ingredient, but I've also got the bourbon barrel soy sauce. It's actually
that's the Kentucky stuff, huh?
Yeah. It's fermented and then it's aged 1 year in old bourbon barrels. Balsamic vinegar. This is just beef broth. 2 bottles of stout beer. It adds bitterness, a little hoppiness. It also adds body.
It makes sense with the caramelization and the smoke and
then of course bourbon. And I have recipes for this, but I always just eyeball it. Shot number 2.
Shot number 2.
So this is gonna go in the oven for about 3.5 hours. I go along and I adopt these recipes that I learned from the rednecks, right?
Yeah.
I'll throw some soy sauce into it and I'll throw some other stuff into it.
Soy sauce makes sense. Soy sauce makes sense with bourbon.
This, yeah. You know, anytime I add bourbon to a dish, it forces me to simplify the dish. Because it's like all of a sudden it becomes very humble. You know, I can't start adding liquid nitrogen to a dish because it doesn't work with bourbon. So I like the way bourbon turns me into a redneck. A Korean redneck. You smell that?
That smells good.
Feels it, huh? Whenever I'm using an ingredient, I love to use it like kind of 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So we're gonna do a little sweet jalapeno jelly.
I like refreshing things with the same.
So you're gonna get, and this is gonna be a purer form of bourbon.
Bourbon, yeah.
Shot 3. I'm gonna make my turnips. That's the most beautiful sound in the world. Oh, nice, perfect. Let's do 1 slice. Like a turnip here. Turnip there. A few raw slices of turnip. Just gonna get it all over. I like a lot of sauce on my plate.
That's a lot of sauce.
That is a lot of sauce. Braised brisket with bourbon.
Can I ask you a question about pairing?
Yes.
So, like, I feel like there are 2 principles to pairing. One is complementary and one is contrast.
Oof, you're talking my language.
Yeah. So we've been doing complementary.
Yes.
I love bourbon so much that a lot of times I order it at times when I think it's probably not the right thing to pair with what I'm eating.
Yeah.
If you were going to contrast with bourbon, what would be something that would
Well,
be
here's the
in a
thing.
sense?
First of all, I'm going to say there's no wrong time to drink bourbon.
Thank God for you, Edley.
And it's probably harder to do with bourbon than it is with wine, just because wine still sort of toes that acidity line very well.
Right.
You have zero acidity in here.
Right.
Now, what I would say, though, is we have this wonderful thing we can do with bourbon, which is mix it into a cocktail.
Yeah.
And when you do that, all of a sudden, it boom. I want to make octopus, because you would normally think, oh, octopus and bourbon doesn't go together.
No.
But now, will you just give me a hand here?
I
and just
don't-
hold this for me above your head. Because this is a serious culinary thing. You have to hold it
Don't.
above your head.
I am not your
About
baby
60.
chef.
So anyway, this is an octopus, and it's
It's gross.
it's the easiest thing in the world.
Really?
To cook. Like, this is it. You
Okay.
could just do this, and this is it.
Really?
So I'm gonna put a lid on this.
Okay.
I'm gonna drink. So this is my bourbon, actually. This is bourbon mixed with a little bit of rye. And rye is gonna give you a little spice. I think it adds a layer of complexity.
Explain to me what the difference is between rye and bourbon.
Bourbon is 51% corn. The rest could be rye, wheat, or rye whiskey has to be 100% rye.
Oh, okay.
I want to do slightly more refined food, but I still want to drink bourbon with it.
To me, this is a more refined bourbon whiskey, and I can see that this would not interfere with your food.
And the great thing is, it still get you drunk just as fast, but it just is a little more refined way.
Which is my shortlist criterion.
You want to take a look at this?
Yeah, I
What do you think it's going to look like?
Like the predator right before it attacks.
Voila.
Yeah. It looks more octopusy now. Like,
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like what you kind of typically think of.
So I'm going to add a little bit of bourbon, and instead of adding salt, I'm going to add bacon.
I think that's a great idea. How do you keep your octopus from getting tough?
There's two ways to eat octopus. You either cook it high heat really fast, like dunk it for 30 seconds, take it out, slice it into it. That's like the Japanese way. Or it's low and slow.
That's like the Mediterranean.
But everything in the middle is going to be tough and nasty. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. What's gonna happen? Animal.
All right, now the fun part begins. Now it looks like octopus.
Now it looks like octopus.
But I always look at sea creatures in general. To me, they all look like aliens.
They do.
Like they're
They
just
do.
from another planet.
I scuba dive, and it's like being on another planet and crazy stuff down there.
I mean, look, what if aliens really are just like they don't land on
Right.
land; they just go right into the
Just
ocean.
into the
and
ocean.
then,
Yeah.
heavy stuff.
Heavy stuff. The bourbon is kicking in, my friend.
All right, so I mean, literally fingerling potatoes. It's been boiled, and I do a really fancy culinary technique. Just do that.
So when you were at the Cordon Bleu and this,
That's what they.
you were.
That's what they taught me. You want to smash one?
Yeah, I do want to smash one.
Okay, don't kill
I
it.
don't, look, I'm a big woman. I have very large, muscular hands. All right.
Firm but tender.
Nice.
All right, what I'm gonna do is turn up the heat.
Okay.
Really hot. I'm gonna add a touch more oil. I'm going to slam on. And I took out a little bit of the bacon pieces too. And I always say, like, when I do this, I'm not even cooking, right? Like the cast iron is doing the work. I'm just applying heat to it. The more you mess with it, the more you're just getting in the cast iron pan's way.
Right.
Like, just gonna add a little bourbon to it. And then the olives. I love adding lemon juice while the pan is still hot. It just kind of steams that lemon juice. And that's pretty much it. And give that a little bit of.
Well, this is complex and rustic at the same time. I'm like, I would never think of making something like this.
And then I'm gonna get just a little bit fancy. This is just a little yogurt that's got some spices in it. This is a little jalapeno puree. Again, I think you would see this and go, oh, maybe a nice Sauvignon Blanc or a Chenin Blanc, but I think it could easily straddle into a bourbon world. Bourbon always was, and it still is. It's a working man's drink. generation ago, or 2 generations ago, bourbon wasn't something you sat around and you took notes on, took tasting notes and compared. There was a time in history where bourbon was very unpopular, and a lot of distilleries went under. It's scary to think, but there was a time when bourbon could have disappeared. But there was a group of very stubborn people in Kentucky who said, no, we're going to keep making this stuff, and we're going to keep making it the right way. What comes out of the mash still is that clear corn whiskey. People will argue differently, but I would say there's not much difference in that flavor between corn mash to corn mash to corn mash. The true flavor of bourbon, the true color, everything to me that distinguishes itself as bourbon comes from the cooperage. When you see those barrels being burned, you are witnessing the essence of bourbon flavor happening right there. It is the corn whiskey and the charred wood that get together, and that's bourbon. Smell of the charred wood, it's intoxicating. What you smell is just that starting point of what bourbon is going to be. I think, you know, as a chef, you're constantly thinking about things that can make your food unique. The big sort of evolution for me of cooking with bourbon was to look back and notice this barrel. Once that barrel has been drained, now you've got this barrel that has 10 years of alcohol that's been sitting in there. It's a lot of flavor in there, but it's also trapped in there. So what do you do with it? This is a bourbon stave. This is one piece of the barrel. If you run your finger along here, you actually pick up a lot of char. So that char flavor is really, for me, it's the essence of smoke. I've always dreamt about sort of using this as food, and because it smells great and it actually has a flavor. You know, I mean, I cook with ash, I cook with fire, I cook with wood, I cook with smoke. Why can't we cook with charred bits of bourbon barrel stave? And so we started thinking about this as an ingredient. We serve a dish on there at the restaurant. It's we do a bison carpaccio. But we actually heat up the bourbon stave so that your very thin slices of bison are hitting this sort of warm wood. And what that does is it releases the vapors of the bourbon inside. But it also, because the meat is resting on this char, and as you can see, my hand's already picked up all this resin and charcoal, so does the meat. And so you just get this delicate flavor of sort of charredness from something that's completely cold, right? So it's kind of, it just plays in your head a little bit. I treat this piece of wood with a lot of respect. It's gone through a lot. It's lived a very long time, and it continues to give us life. This is the last bourbon I want to taste for you guys, and I just want you to look at this. And I don't open this for just any
Cheers.
This is not an old bourbon. It's probably somewhere between 10 and 12 years. But the bottle itself, probably bottled sometime in the 60s.
Love that. Your key to hospitality.
adorable.
Isn't it awesome? To me, this is a living treasure. The idea of bourbon and the lore being passed on to me is very special. I understand how dear it is. I understand how precious it is. And it is one of the few things that are truly precious. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna give you a little bit. So I wanna do a little more sorghum on this popcorn, but I'm also gonna add Matt Jamie's smoked sea salt. And one of the things that's very important in the culture of Kentucky is to sort of, you know, man up and drink your bourbon.
It gives me like kind of library and old books and a burned down fire and leather and pipe and all of these really comforting ways.
Now, this to me is rough. It's hairy. You know, it's got fisticuffs. I think stylistically, the bourbon of the last generation was this, and all the bourbon we drink now is a little bit more. It's a little bit more pinky in the air, and it's a little bit finer, and it's a little bit more refined. It's much more than just the drink that is in the glass. It is a rite of passage. It is a ritual. It is something that when you pass it on. And it's done in a way that's very familial. So to be a part of that cycle for me, I treat it with honor. Let's close your eyes, smell it. Pipe.
Yeah,
Grandpa,
I will totally.
your grandfather.
Meerschaum pipe.
Yeah.
Like
Huh?
I just get lots of leather.
Good
A lot of
too.
leather.
so many jokes I could make right now.
It's like a 60-year-old drag queen wearing like old leather and smoking a pipe. Is that?
What do you do on the weekends? What are
Let me show you my Kentucky. Come.